Hello friends, let us now learn some important points about epistaxis. So, epistaxis, the most important thing about epistaxis is there are two areas. One we have Little's area, second we have Woodruff's plexus where epistaxis can occur. This is the Little's area which is the most common site of epistaxis in children and in young adults. It is located mainly in the anteroinferior part of the nasal septum. It is located mainly in the anteroinferior part of the nasal septum, and the branches include the plexus of the anterior ethmoidal arteries, mainly the anterior ethmoidal arteries. You will also see anterior ethmoidal arteries. You will also see sphenopalatine artery, and then there is superior labial artery, and there is greater palatine artery. So all these arteries will form a plexus in the Little's area. What are the arteries? It is anterior ethmoidal artery, sphenopalatine artery, which is also called as artery of epistaxis, septal branch of greater palatine artery, and septal branch of superior labial artery. That is one type of, that is the Little's plexus. Then we have the second plexus, which is also important, which is called as Woodruff's plexus. We also have one more plexus which is important, which is called as Woodruff's plexus. So Woodruff's plexus is mainly located. Where is Woodruff's plexus located? It is located somewhere here. Okay. In the Woodruff's plexus, we have a sphenopalatine artery and also posterior pharyngeal artery. We have sphenopalatine artery and posterior pharyngeal artery are seen in Woodruff's plexus. So this is posterior pharyngeal artery. Sphenopalatine artery and posterior pharyngeal artery in Woodruff's plexus. It is located lateral nasal wall. This is the lateral nasal wall, and it is located inferior to the posterior end of inferior turbinate. So here you will have inferior turbinate. It is located at the inferior wall of posterior end of inferior turbinate. Now, one more important thing is about the brown area. This brown area is also a part of the nasal septum where epistaxis can occur. Then we have retrocolumnar area. Retrocolumnar vein. Retrocolumnar vein is the most common site of venous bleeding in children, in young people. Retrocolumnar vein. So retrocolumnar vein is the most common type of bleeding in young children which occurs in young people. In young people, you see retrocolumnar vein, which is the most common site of venous bleeding in young people. Then if you see this epistaxis, it can occur in anteriorly or it can occur posteriorly. If it occurs anteriorly, if the source is anterior to the piriform aperture, then we call it as anterior epistaxis. If it occurs posteriorly and the source is posterior to the piriform aperture, then we call it posterior epistaxis. This posterior epistaxis can occur either in the lateral wall, or it can occur in the septum, or it can even occur in the floor of the nasal cavity. Now, epistaxis. Epistaxis can occur either in the child or in the adult. One more important thing is epistaxis can occur. This epistaxis can occur either in children or in adults. Children, if it occurs, it is less than 16 years of age. If it occurs in adults, it is more than 16 years of age. Then we have the types of epistaxis. Epistaxis are again of two types. We have primary epistaxis and secondary epistaxis. Okay. Now the epistaxis is of two types. It can be primary epistaxis and secondary epistaxis. In primary epistaxis, it is idiopathic, and secondary epistaxis, it occurs due to trauma, surgery, and overdose of anticoagulants. Then the epistaxis is again divided into two types. One, we have anterior epistaxis. Second, we have posterior epistaxis. So in anterior epistaxis, it is most common type of epistaxis, whereas posterior epistaxis is less common. Anterior epistaxis occurs when one blows the nose or blows the blood out of the nose, then there is anterior epistaxis. When one blows the blood back the nose, then it is posterior epistaxis. Anterior epistaxis occurs mainly in the Little's area. Posterior epistaxis occurs mainly in the posterior superior part most commonly. Anterior epistaxis mainly occurs in the children and the young adult, whereas posterior epistaxis occurs more than 40 years of age. Anterior epistaxis trauma is the most common cause. Posterior epistaxis occurs due to hypertension or atherosclerosis. Causes posterior epistaxis. Then, if you see the epistaxis in children, epistaxis is actually rare below 2 years of age. The most common time is it occurs between 3 to 8 years of age is the most common most common age of epistaxis. It is actually most common in winter months. That too, why? Because of increased upper respiratory tract infections are seen in winter months. What is the most common site? Obviously, anterior epistaxis is most common in children. So, it is most common in the anterior part of the nasal septum, because in the anterior part of the nasal septum, the nasal mucosa is very thin and it is exposed to dry air currents. So, it is most common in the anterior part of nasal septum. This anterior part of nasal septum, where the uh, nasal mucosa is thin and epistaxis is common, is actually the Little's area. If you were asked what is the most common cause of epistaxis in children, that is idiopathic cause is most common, followed by digital trauma or nose pricking in the Little's area occurs mainly due to the crusting. Then, if you see in the children, we have unilateral epistaxis is present in the children. If there is, if you get a case where unilateral epistaxis is present in children, in such cases you will have to rule out one thing: foreign body should always be ruled out. If unilateral epistaxis, foreign body should be ruled out in the children. Then there are recurrent causes of epistaxis in children. So in the recurrent causes, if you see, first we have allergic rhinitis. Obviously, if there is, the child has allergy, then there is increased chances of recurrent epistaxis. Or if there is any foreign body retained in the nose, that causes recurrent epistaxis. If the patient has any hemorrhagic disease like idiopathic thrombocytopenic purpura, von Willebrand disease, in all these cases there will be recurrent epistaxis. If the child has angiofibroma, or there is nasal meiosis, or if there is use of nasal sprays, especially if there is use of intranasal steroid sprays, all these will cause recurrent epistaxis in children. And if the child, there is any vascular abnormalities like AV malformations, or if there are any hemangiomas, so obviously because of vascular malformations, if the child tries to prick them, they bleed easily. So what are the causes of recurrent epistaxis? Allergic rhinitis, hemorrhagic disease, retained nasal foreign body, idiopathic thrombocytopenic purpura, von Willebrand disease, angiofibroma, nasal mycosis, vascular abnormalities like AV malformation, hemangioma, use of nasal sprays, especially intranasal steroid sprays. All these are actually in children. If you were asked the same thing about recurrent epistaxis in adults, then what are the causes of recurrent epistaxis in adults? Mostly they are due to secondary causes. Like recurrent epistaxis can be due to any type of coagulopathy. First, if there is any liver disease, in liver disease there is decreased synthesis of coagulation factors, so that will causes epistaxis. Or if there is any kidney disease, in kidney disease, especially in nephrotic syndrome, there is hypercoagulopathy, and also some of the clotting factors will be lost in urine. So the in kidney also you will see recurrent epistaxis. Then if the child, if the adult has leukemia, in leukemia sometimes present with thrombocytopenia. So because of decreased blood platelets, so obviously there will be recurrent epistaxis. Then trauma. Obviously, if there is any type of trauma, that the adult pricking the nose, then, or if there is any accident, or if there is any injury to the nose, all these causes recurrent epistaxis. Post surgery, especially if you see in any type of surgery, nasal, especially nasal surgeries can cause recurrent epistaxis. And if the patient is on warfarin is an anticoagulant which inhibits the and it will inhibit the clotting factors, which are vitamin K dependent clotting factors, because it inhibits the vitamin K epoxidase enzyme. So as a result, this warfarin will also cause recurrent epistaxis. Then there can be juvenile nasopharyngeal angiofibroma. In juvenile nasopharyngeal angiofibroma is seen in young pubertal male, or young adult male, young male of 14 to 15 years of age, who has recurrent um, bleeding, recurrent hemorrhage, that is juvenile nasopharyngeal angiofibroma. Then it can be due to hemangiopericytoma also, and also hereditary hemorrhagic telangiectasia. So all these are the causes of recurrent epistaxis. If you were asked what is the most common cause of recurrent epistaxis in adults, hypertension is the most common cause of recurrent epistaxis in adults. Then what is the most common site of epistaxis in adults? It is actually the Woodruff's plexus are the most common site of epistaxis in adults. Then if you see the treatment, so in the treatment, first and foremost we should do first aid. In first aid there is a method which is called as Trotter's method. What do you do in Trotter's method? You will first pinch the nose, and then patient is made to sit with a cork between the teeth, and we will allow the patient to bleed, okay, and then you will apply the ice cold water to the face. Okay, when you pinch the nose with your fingers, then that will cause you are compressing the vessels, and thus it decreases bleeding. That is the principle in Trotter's method. Then treatment in hospitals. In hospitals you can do anterior nasal packing. In a anterior nasal packing, here the nose is packed with a rubber gauze. You will take a rubber gauze. If this is the nose, here you will take a rubber gauze, and then you will take a rubber gauze and you will pack the nose like this. And this rubber gauze is actually soaked with an antibiotic, which is Neosporin antiseptic cream, for 24 to 48 hours. And it is put for 24 to 48 hours. Okay, we can also use Marocil packs, which are alternative. Then if this is not possible, then there is one more technique which is called as balloon tamponade. This balloon tamponade, there is a balloon which is an air tube, there is an airway tube, there is a posterior balloon, you will see anterior balloon, and you will also see presence of side ports are seen. So this is put in the nose, which will allow the patient to breathe, and also it will compress the skin of the nasal cavity. So as a result, that decreases the bleeding. Then we have one more, which is posterior nasal packing. If you see posterior nasal packing, the most common, this posterior nasal packing is also done. If you were seen what is the most common complication, serious complication of posterior nasal bleeding, it is pulmonary hypertension is the most common serious complication, and you will also see that the patient will develop sleep apnea. Then if you see the vessel ligation, if anterior nasal packing and posterior nasal packing do not work, then in such cases we should do one more thing can be done, which is called as vessel ligation. So in the vessel ligation, first we can do external carotid artery ligation. External carotid artery ligation is actually the operation of choice in patients with elderly and also in debilitated patients who are in anterior who have anterior epistaxis. It is mainly indicated if the bleeding from the external carotid artery and if all the other measures are failed, that is, it is the last resort. Here you will ligate just above the superior thoracic artery, above the origin of if this is the superior thoracic artery, above the origin of superior thoracic artery, here you will ligate the vessel. Next, the second artery, which the next is maxillary artery. Maxillary artery ligation is performed for the posterior bleeds in the pterygopalatine fossa, and this is performed by an Caldwell look approach. You will perform the maxillary artery. It is performed mainly in the posterior bleeds. Okay, next we have the next ligature method of choice is TESPAL. What is TESPAL? It is transnasal endoscopic sphenopalatine artery ligation. This transnasal endoscopic sphenopalatine artery ligation is the ligation method of choice, and then, or you can say, surgery of choice. It is also the ligation method of choice, or it is the surgery of choice. Next, you can also ligate the anterior and posterior ethmoidal arteries also. Okay, this anterior and posterior ethmoidal arteries are actually ligated between the inner canthus of the eyes and midline of the nose. In between it is ligated. Okay, so these are the important things. Thank you.